You know what's interesting? We spend 12 years in school learning algebra, memorizing historical dates, and dissecting Shakespeare. But somehow we graduate without understanding how the place that holds our money actually works. I'm talking about banks, and I'm not referring to the basics like opening a checking account or using an ATM. I'm talking about the real mechanics behind banking, the system that shapes our entire economy, yet remains mysteriously absent from our education. Today, we're going to uncover something that most people go their entire lives without understanding, and once you get it, you'll never look at your bank the same way again. So let's start with a simple question. What happens when you deposit $100 into your bank account? If you're like most people, you probably imagine your money sitting safely in a vault somewhere, maybe in a drawer with your name on it, just waiting for you to come back and withdraw it. That's certainly what it feels like, right? You can check your balance anytime, see that $100 listed there, and withdraw it whenever you want. But here's the thing. That's not actually what's happening. When you deposit money into a bank, the bank doesn't just store it. In fact, the bank is legally allowed to take your deposit and immediately lend most of it out to other people. This system is called fractional reserve banking, and it's been the foundation of modern banking for decades. Here's how it works in practice. Let's say you deposit that $100. The bank is required by law to keep only a fraction of it in reserve, historically around 10%, though these requirements have changed over time. That means they keep $10 available and can lend out the remaining $90 to someone else, maybe someone buying a car, starting a business, or purchasing a home. Now here's where it gets really interesting. That $90 that gets loaned out, it eventually gets deposited into another bank account. And then that bank can lend out 90% of that amount. This process repeats itself throughout the banking system, which means your original $100 deposit can actually support several $100s worth of loans across the economy. Now you might be thinking, wait, isn't that risky? What if everyone wants their money back at the same time? That's actually a really smart question, and it's exactly what happened during the Great Depression. When people lost confidence in banks, they rushed to withdraw their money all at once. This is called a bank run. Since banks didn't have everyone's cash on hand, many collapsed, and people lost their life savings. This is precisely why the Federal Deposit Insurance Corporation, or FDIC, was created in 1933. Today, the FDIC insures deposits up to $250,000 per depositor per bank. So even if a bank fails, your money is protected up to that amount. This insurance creates confidence in the system and prevents those devastating bank runs we saw in the past. But let's get back to the question, why does this system exist in the first place? The answer is that fractional reserve banking serves a crucial economic function. It allows banks to act as intermediaries between savers and borrowers. Think about it. You might have money sitting in your account that you don't need right now, while someone across town desperately needs a loan to expand their business or buy a home. The bank connects these two needs. This system also creates what economists call the money multiplier effect. That original $100 you deposited doesn't just sit idle, it actively circulates through the economy, supporting job creation, business growth, and economic development. Without this system, economic growth would be significantly slower because capital couldn't flow efficiently to where it's needed most. Now let's talk about something else they don't really explain in school: how banks actually make their money. You've probably noticed that banks pay you interest on your savings account, right? Maybe it's something small like 0.5% annually, but when the bank loans out your money, they might charge the borrower 5%, 6%, or even higher for a credit card. This difference between what the bank pays you and what they charge borrowers is called the interest rate spread, and it's the primary way banks generate profit. If they pay you 1% on your deposit and charge someone else 5% on a loan, they pocket the 4% difference. Multiply that across millions of customers and billions of dollars, and you can see how this becomes extremely profitable. Banks also make money through fees: monthly maintenance fees, overdraft fees, ATM fees, wire transfer fees, and countless others. In recent years, some banks have actually made more money from fees than from traditional lending, which is why you'll see a growing movement toward fee-free banking alternatives. There's also something called maturity transformation that banks engage in. This means they take short-term deposits, money you could withdraw tomorrow, and use them to make long-term loans like 30-year mortgages. They profit from this because long-term loans typically carry higher interest rates than short-term deposits. However, this also introduces risk, which is why banking is so heavily regulated. Here's another piece of the puzzle that's crucial to understand: the Federal Reserve. The Federal Reserve, often called the Fed, is the central bank of the United States. It's not a government agency in the traditional sense, but rather an independent entity created by Congress. The Fed has enormous influence over the entire banking system through its control of monetary policy. One of the Fed's main tools is setting the federal funds rate, essentially the interest rate that banks charge each other for overnight loans. When the Fed raises this rate, borrowing becomes more expensive throughout the economy, which tends to slow down economic activity and reduce inflation. When they lower it, borrowing becomes cheaper, which encourages spending and investment. The Fed also acts as the lender of last resort during financial crises. When banks are struggling and normal lending channels freeze up, the Fed can step in to provide liquidity, essentially emergency funding, to keep the financial system functioning. We saw this happen dramatically during the 2008 financial crisis and again during the economic disruptions of 2020. Understanding the Fed's role helps you make sense of why interest rates on your savings account or mortgage change over time. These aren't random fluctuations, they're often responses to Fed policy decisions designed to keep the economy balanced between growth and stability. So why does all of this matter to you personally? First, understanding how banks work changes how you think about your money. Your bank balance isn't exactly cash sitting in a vault, it's really a promise from the bank to give you that amount when you ask for it. This distinction becomes important when choosing where to keep your money. Make sure your deposits are at FDIC-insured institutions, and if you have more than $250,000, spread it across multiple banks to ensure full coverage. Second, knowing how banks make money gives you negotiating power. Banks need your deposits to make loans and earn profits. This means you can shop around for the best interest rates, lowest fees, and most favorable terms. Online banks, for example, often offer significantly higher interest rates on savings accounts because they have lower overhead costs than traditional brick-and-mortar banks. Third, understanding the broader banking system helps you make better financial decisions. When the Fed signals it's going to raise interest rates, you might want to lock in a fixed-rate mortgage before rates climb higher. When rates are low, it might be a good time to refinance existing debts or make major purchases that require financing. The banking system affects everything from the interest you earn on savings to the rates you pay on loans, the health of your investment portfolio, and even the price of goods at the grocery store through its influence on inflation. The mechanics of banking aren't particularly complicated once someone actually explains them, yet they're mysteriously absent from our formal education. Maybe it's an oversight, or maybe there's an assumption that people will figure it out on their own. Either way, most of us don't. But now you know, and knowledge really is power, especially when it comes to your money. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.